RT presents Saudi official who killed German cyclist uses diplomatic immunity to avoid prosecution. A Saudi diplomat will not face prosecution for negligent manslaughter after he opened the door of his Porsche suddenly on Tuesday, hitting a 55-year-old cyclist who later died from severe head trauma sustained in the accident. I don't care if he's a diplomat or not. The man's widow, Marina, told Bild newspaper. He should get his just punishment, she said. Misha was always worried about this road. He said there would be an accident, she added. Niqabs and burqas not welcome. Germany's first liberal mosque opens in Berlin on RT. Not sure if this is relevant, but sure, whatever. The German authorities can only formally expel the 50-year-old diplomat or request the Saudi government waive his immunity so that he can be prosecuted. The Saudi embassy published a statement expressing condolences for the family on Friday. I guess this is the message where they said sorry, because this is a message from the Saudi Arabic in German. And I don't know German, so I can't read that, sadly. Saudi Arabian charge d'affaires Adnan Boustayi also visited the family of the deceased on Friday, according to a statement issued by the Saudi press agency. In 2016, diplomats committed 22,816 traffic violations in Berlin, including speeding and parking offenses, and were involved in 60 accidents, of which 28 resulted in injuries. Of those offenses, 735 were committed by Chinese diplomats, 697 by Russian, and 683 by those from Saudi Arabia. Despicable reports. Diplomatic immunity costs Berlin hundreds of thousands of euros in uncollectible fines. The incident came just 2 days after 100,000 cyclists took over the streets of Berlin during the annual ADFC Sternfahrt to protest for better conditions throughout Germany. This is a picture of the cyclist that protested, I suppose. ADFC Sternfahrt was a lot of fun. Wish I could ride the Autobahn without cars every Sunday. Probably quite a nice ride, huh? And that was the article. Well, you see, no one is above the law, some people say, but clearly here, with these diplomats committing these offenses, they clearly get away with a lot. It's like almost 1,000. It was each year, right? So almost 700. Well, Chinese were over 700. Russian was just a little below 700, as well as the Saudis. But this is something you learn quite early in traffic school, that you're supposed to watch before you open the door. But these people seems to be so arrogant that they would just flung the door right open, and this guy probably crashed into that door, flung over, flipped, and broke his neck. You know, the neck is quite sensitive if you land on your head, even though you have a helmet. But still, this guy should really be prosecuted, in my opinion. No one is above the law, especially if they are responsible to kill someone. I mean, what they could do is to kill a person and then just leave the country and be like, haha, I got diplomatic immunity. It's like Lethal Weapon all over again.
Diplomatic immunity.
It's just been revoked.
It bothers the hell out of me that he's gonna be able to get away with this unless the German government would intervene and say to the Saudis, no, we want to prosecute him, we want justice. But, you know, with Merkel, I doubt that's gonna happen, and it's sickening to my gut to know that, you know, that Germany used to be this giant evil empire, right? They used to have Hitler, and now, just only 50 years later, they're still leading the European Union. Like, what the heck? Though I think the European Union was founded after that, but you still get my point. It's like, why should Germany be so influential in these things? But regardless, what I think about the European Union, this was a great tragedy, and well, I don't think diplomats should be protected from killing people. That's basically it, really. But on another point that's interesting about Saudi Arabia, I saw a most intriguing report on the Ron Paul show where his co-host was interviewing a Bulgarian, I think, journalist who discovered a tunnel, basically, where they were shipping weapons to the jihadists. CIA, I think, the Americans were shipping weapons so they could just take and fight in Syria, I think this was. Along with other dark discoveries, like the industries are actually producing weapons still, even though some are not supposed to do. For example, her own home country, Bulgaria, and they ship off weapons to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is known to supply jihadists with weapons. So, lots of countries, America, all throughout the West, people are supplying these warmongers with weapons. And we do know that these people are getting supplied by the Saudis. It has come out in many documents. The 9/11 attacks was helped by the Saudis, and if you just look at the hijacker list where they came from, most of them was Saudis. One was Lebanese, and two was from Egypt, I think, and the rest was Saudis. And it's dangerous that people aren't awake to this. I mean, every country that produces weapons like this and sells to Saudi Arabia should stand in protest and force these companies or whatever, whether it's private, whether it's government funded, to force them to shut down, because they are making the wars in the Middle East. They are giving weapons to people like in ISIS that are our mortal enemies, that our soldiers has to go down to the Middle East, try to solve the conflict, and then it gets all worse. The Iraq war, etc. Like, just end the wars. Stop supplying these people with weapons. But of course, the weapons manufacturers, they won't say no, because they get rich like hell. They don't care if people die. It's not their problem. And the globalists, they want the conflicts to be there, so we will become impoverished and we will take in immigrants, we will change our demographics, we will change our society. It's all a process. But we have to stand up and say no. But we don't. Because like in the London terrorist attack that was recently, people are just shrugging it off like, oh, well, like whatever, you know. And it's going to be the same thing here in Sweden. Like in the next terror attack that will come, not saying it will happen next day or whatever, it will come eventually. I can almost bet on that, probably when we're going to shut our borders, because right now people are like, we have to take in immigrants. Immigrants, it's a must. So they are just going to wait until we shut our borders, and once we shut our borders, they will call for jihad and start to shoot people. It will happen, and whenever that will happen, people will stand, we stand in solidarity. We will continuously say these stupid things, because more than a generation have been brainwashed into this. It's sickening to me, especially my generation, the millennials, because the millennials are the most brainwashed generation in the world. Generation C, however, shows more promise to be more conservative, because they are actually waking up to the faked media and they haven't been as much brainwashed, but I wouldn't believe that to 100%, because, well, I keep seeing lots of young people also being brainwashed, and you know, you see these teachers forcing students to be in these protests saying, oh, we have to be anti-racist, but it's just a process to brainwash us, to make us think that we're doing a righteous cause, and it's all being manipulated, it's all being calculated. These globalists are smart, they are not stupid, but some people might seem crazy, but that's because people are crazy and they relate to these crazy personalities. And for example, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, perfect examples of crazy.
We've seen nothing that we can work, that I can work with President Bush on, and I'm disappointed because I thought that there might be some interest because of what he said in the campaign. Or whoever wins understands the priorities of the American people, and they are not what President Bush, excuse me. I'm so sorry, President Bush. I never thought I'd pray for the day that you were president again. They do not believe in it. And a lot of those people voted for what's his name?
Yeah.
The President of the United States. Those who've had business dealings with him, he operates this way. First, he tries to charm you. President Bush tries to charm you. If that doesn't work, he tries to bully you. In fact, affecting California very directly is the Affordable Care Act. President Bush has come out against that, as you know.
I want to define what you mean by collusion, because what you're talking about seems more circumstantial to me. Bank records, perhaps contacts that were of a nebulous nature. Who knows why Flynn was talking to the Russian ambassador? It could have been, it seems to have been about sanctions. Collusion to me is very specific. It means that the Russian government or actors within were trying to elect Donald Trump. But I want to know what collusion means to you, because that seems to be the standard by which you're saying he should be impeached.
Yes, absolutely. I am talking about strategies that were developed working with the Trump campaign. I really do believe that much of what you saw coming out of Trump's mouth was a play from Putin's playbook. I think that when you saw him absolutely calling Hillary crooked, lock her up, all of that was developed. I think that was developed strategically with people from the Kremlin, with Putin, and I think it's more than bank records. I think that you can see that visits, to Moscow were made during the campaign by Manafort and others. I think it's a lot more absolute.
So you think the Russian government developed the talking points for the Trump campaign?
I think that there was a cooperation in developing strategy about how they could ensure that Hillary Clinton was not elected. They need Trump. Trump will be there to support lifting those sanctions. That's what they really want to happen. They want to drill in the Arctic. Tillerson has negotiated a multi-billion-dollar deal with Exxon to do that drilling. They can't get the equipment, the supplies, and all that they need until the sanctions are lifted. They want Trump. Not only will he support lifting those sanctions, he also will turn a blind eye to the expansion that Putin is trying to do. He does not care about them having invaded Crimea, and he does not care whether or not this egotistical maniac Putin is attempting to reunite the whole Soviet
I know we need to go soon, but just to be clear, there has been no actual evidence yet.
No, it has not been.
Okay. I just want
no,
to
it has not. And I want you to know, every time I've talked about impeachment, I've said we've got to connect the dots, we've got to get the facts, we've got to do the investigation. That is what leads to impeachment. And I also said that Trump will lead us right there.
And Hillary Clinton, to some degree, she's very smart, but obviously she likes also to do crazy comments. That's really outrageous. Just listen to Linda Sarsour. Lots of these left personalities are insane in the things they say, but they know what they're doing. They know they got a free pass to say these crazy things. The double standard is there, and it's just gonna grow and grow and grow. And these Saudis are still getting a free pass on supporting terrorist groups. And by the way, to clarify one thing, because some people might think, what do you have against Saudis? I don't have a thing particularly against Saudis people. I bet there's lots of Saudis people I would like. However, they're controlled by Islam, which is a very evil ideology. I don't consider it as a religion because the prophet is false, first and foremost. And secondly, most of the time when I speak of a country, I usually refer to its establishment, its government. And with an evil, corrupt government, they usually are bad. And the globalists, of course, with their European Union project, their American pet state that constantly wage wars. I mean, it's nothing against the people most of the time. I mean, of course, there's gonna be people in the country that I have disagreements with or simply don't like, but that's a completely different thing when I from when I speak about politics like this. Because I assume you're smart enough to realize when I speak of weapons manufacturers that usually it is on state level or it's privately owned and it has to be regulated. So they don't just sell off weapons to terrorists in masses and all of a sudden we have a war emerging. You know, it's probably something people should be awake to. And basically what I'm hoping when I talk to the people is that they won't sit silent and just be, whatever, it's not my problem, you know, I can't do anything, I'm just a civilian. Activists are needed. We need to take action because otherwise these wars will continuously happen and more deaths will come and people like these criminals that just can manslaughter someone and then say, diplomatic immunity, and they are gonna go free. Corrupt government officials that takes taxpayer monies for parties and such, they are just gonna get free passes if people don't stand up. And Romania showed what you should do. They stood there and protested against them when they tried to legislate corrupt laws that would help corrupt politicians to endure and thrive better within the country. But the Romanian people said hell no, and they had to thwart their plans. So that's what I basically mean, that you don't simply accept when your country says, well, we're gonna take in 500 million Afghan migrants and then we're gonna change our laws according to theirs and we're gonna supply Saudi Arabia with all of our weaponry and give up our economics because we have to be tolerant, we have to be open, you know. At some point you have to really step your foot down because those things I literally said are happening, you know. We are taking in people, we're impoverishing our countries, we're destroying our entire infrastructures, and people aren't even raising up a hand. And these corrupt bastards can get away with just about anything. I mean, they're ambassadors, they're supposed to represent their country, they're supposed to be like, you know, a pretty good example of what a Russian is, of what a Saudi Arabian is, what a Chinese is, wherever the hell they came from is. But these people are like, oh yeah, whatever, I speed, I drive fast, I hit someone with the car, you know, diplomatic immunity. But before I end here, let's check on the comments, because comments can be funny to read. Will 214, what a cowardly thing to do. Take responsibility for your actions. Well, they don't want to do that thing. Red thing, exactly. Henry Pye, the cops would not arrest a Saudi diplomat for murder because the government need Saudi defense contracts. Stephen, not true anymore. Saudi Arabia said that they won't buy from Germany anymore. They were obviously annoyed by demands to honor human rights. So now they are buying elsewhere. China, Russia, the US, they all don't mention human rights when making deals. Not true, according to other sources. For example, the video mentions, and by the way, the co-host is named like Andrew, Dr. Andrew or something like that. I don't remember his name, but he's very nice guy, so I highly recommend that video if you're interested to learn more about the weapons manufacturing in Saudi Arabia and how they get weapons. Well, not in Saudi Arabia, those people that give Saudi Arabia weapons. Wise man, diplomatic immunity equals power to abuse, change this ludicrous system, full accountability, full responsibility, no one above the law. Manhat, if that would happen, none of your diplomats are coming back from the most corrupt countries in the world. If they would, they might be in a bag. Well, that's actually sort of true, because if they wouldn't have diplomatic immunity, imagine people that would be in an Islamic country that doesn't follow Sharia law, for example, because they don't believe in that. Then they could be executed and stuff like that. So it's very needed to have diplomatic immunity to some extent for their own security. But I don't think they should get away with high degrees murder and stuff like that. Because they can literally get away with stuff like that. Mern. The numbers of violations by diplomats quoted in the article is astounding. Countries must send their stupidest or most corrupt diplomats to other countries. Sending. Yeah, it's, you know, they're careless. They don't care, you know, whatever if I do a crime, whatever if I speed. You know, most of these things are probably speeding. Wise up. That is true. But rat poison kills all the rats, not just the bad ones. So a lawyer, once implemented, would be accountable. And if our politicians and also so-called elites, then they would fully understand the repercussions of their actions and the ramifications of the law. Yeah, that's true. No one really understands what it is like to actually face the law and the consequences because they can get away with those things. B. Put that Arab in prison. This message has been deleted by an unknown guy. How? We can't clone the mus yet. No human DNA, so we cannot map it yet. Right, I guess that was a reference to the deleted comment. Sounded odd. Don't really want to comment on that anymore. Mr. Tepps. Disgusting Muslims. I agree with you there. K44. Wahhabism terrorists controlled by crypto Jews. The Saudi family are only Muslims in name. I don't know exactly what he referred to by that statement, because lots of Nazis are, you know, blaming Jews for just about anything. But some people are actually making valid points that because a lot of these politicians that are forcing mass immigration, and for example, here in Sweden, there was a woman that came from America that was Jewish, and she said that we all should be Jewish in Sweden because it's a strong religion, and then she wanted to force in immigration to convert them to, you know, it's just pointless, it's just lots of bullshit, and it would help Sweden to become culturally enriched as well, even though Sweden is one of those most peaceful countries since, you know, quite some time, and we had it quite good, but since we have taken in lots of immigrants, it hasn't been that good. Because if you actually look at the faiths of these people that claims to be Jewish, some people just say that for entitlements and stuff like that, you know, the oppression Olympics. Oh, the Holocaust, oh, it's so horrible, I'm Jewish, praise me. That's basically what they're saying. I hope you at least enjoyed the article to some extent. I mean, it's not a fun article in any way, but it's good to know that diplomats are actually getting away with, well, just look at these numbers. 735 committed by Chinese diplomats, 697 by Russian, and 683 by Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's offenses done by diplomats. But anyways, it's an eye-opener. And by the way, if you're committed and want to research on stuff, you know, try to look in your own country how many of these atrocities are being committed by diplomats. And that should be perhaps something to actually protest against. It's just unheard of, these numbers. I mean, I knew that people were abusing their abilities of diplomatic immunity, but not to this extent. It's huge numbers. I mean, there's probably more than just one ambassador, right? I mean, depends from which country. I mean, if it's a bigger country or a country that has more influence within the country, they're obviously gonna have more diplomats. And Germany is quite a big country, so maybe they're gonna need more diplomats for that instance, but still, I mean, most people survive without getting any penalty for, you know, more than like 10 years, a decade or so, if they're law-abiding citizens. So I think this is just a raw act of negligence. It was a different thing if it was from all the ambassadors combined, from all the countries within Germany, because then it will be a reasonable number. But this list was from individual countries. And I also forgot to mention that in that interview I talked about, she tried to call the embassy for answers. What happens? Why is these deals still on? Why are they producing weapons to the Saudis? But they failed to deliver an answer every time she asked. I highly recommend you checking out that interview. She spoke, but she sort of speaks most of the time, and if you have a problem understanding Eastern European accents, it might be a little bit more difficult for you. But I highly suggest that interview because it was really interesting, and the Ron Paul show in general differs from conservatives and socialist leftists, cultural Marxists, or whatever you wish to call them, because these people are actual classical liberals. They follow the classical liberal vision. They are not for war in the Middle East. They're actually not for intervention at all. And they still have some conservative ideas like not aborting babies and stuff like that. And they give very good and I would say also accurate analysis of things. And some people have even wanted to censor them. Why? Because they're probably the most liberal people in the world. Like, come on, wake up. Because being a liberal does not mean that you have to accept everyone for their crazy ideas, etc. It means that you simply tolerate people and you want democracy, a free open market and a limited government. You know, government is supposed to regulate, help support certain base rights. But they're not supposed to control every single detail and aspect of your life like the totalitarian ideologies want. Whether it is the far left or the far right. Because the farther they are to the left and right, the closer they are to each other. Because in reality, they are the same thing. It's just governmental control. Yes, they have different aspects of their governments. So basically what libertarians want is not the government to come and tell you what you can do, what you can think, what you can say, and intervene in your life like that. You should be able to, as an individual, make decisions for yourself in your life. Though personally, with the current climate that has hit the West, I personally would probably prefer the libertarian ideas if they actually were sustained in a orderly fashion. But if we have to sacrifice our identities as people, for example the Swedish people, to become Arabic Muslims, you know, I don't see that as the future I want for my people. So I rather to tend to more conservative lines of thinking. But, well, that is sort of extinct here in the West. But, well, at least here in Sweden. But that's just my analysis of it. And, well, the socialist left are just bad regardless of case. Anyways, I hope that information helped. But this is where I get off.